LCBC. I'm so excited to start this brand new series called Getting It Right with People Who Matter the Most. But I know what you're thinking. Jason, you look so different this year. I'm sorry. My name's not Jason. My name is Joseph Gutierrez, and I get the honor and privilege of serving our students here across all of our campuses at LCBC. Actually, me and my family moved here 2 years ago across the country from California to Pennsylvania to be a part of what God was doing here. We took all of these 4 kids and loaded them up in 2 cars and drove across country. Guys, pray for us. But what we fell in love with were 2 big things here. The first thing was the mission of LCBC, of introducing people to Jesus and together fully following him. The second thing that we fell in love with was this idea or this value of relationships. It wasn't just something hung up on a wall. It wasn't just something said, but it was something that was truly lived out. And wouldn't it be fitting that today we would begin a brand new series talking about just that? How do we get it right with people who matter the most? But there's a question that kept coming up over and over again as we talked about this. And that question was, shouldn't it be easy? Shouldn't it be easy to get along with family, friends, and loved ones? Because those relationships matter so much. However, there's a problem that we figured out in every relationship. And that problem is people. Guys, people do some really peopleish things. Joe, I need you to explain that a little bit more. I'm so glad you asked. If you don't believe me, think back to your most recent holiday experience. And if your family is as joyous or dysfunctional as mine, then you have some characters inside of your family. The first is like an uncle like mine, who loves to bring up controversial issues when everyone is together. And this year, they decided, I know what we'll talk about, politics, because that'll unite us and bring us all together as one family. Or maybe you have a brother who's always late. And this year you thought you had a fix. I'll just tell them, show up an hour early. That'll do the trick. Well, guess what? They found out, and they figured out a way to show up 2 hours late, and then they forgot one of the most important parts of the meal, and now you have to sit at dinner pretending as if everything's okay. Or maybe you have an aunt, and she just loves drinking too much. And when I say that, I'm not saying she's over-caffeinated. I'm saying she does that, and then she likes to argue and fight with everybody in the entire family. Guys, people do some peopleish things. And no matter where you're from, whether you're from California or Pennsylvania, people are everywhere. And you've got to deal with people. However, I know you're going to be surprised. There are some major differences coming from California to Pennsylvania. In fact, there are some things that we are so grateful to be here. Like the first major difference of being in Pennsylvania is, guys, you guys have affordable housing. I know you're like, Joe, inflation is crazy. You don't understand. It's not like it used to be. Trust me, I do. When you move from a state where it has $10 a gallon for both milk and gas, it hits different living in Pennsylvania. But also, one thing I love about Pennsylvania is being 2 hours away from everything. You can be 2 hours away from the middle of nowhere to a major city to another state. In California, I could drive 10 hours and still be in the same miserable state. But guys, you also have some things that's taking me some time to get used to. For instance, in California, I had to deal with this a lot. Looking at it gives me some type of panic attack. Because this is everyday life for me. It didn't matter whether it was Friday at 5 or 2 a.m. on a Monday. It could be Saturday at 12 noon, and this would be life all the time. But Pennsylvania, you guys got some stuff too. Some things that have really taken me time to get used to. Because in this, I had to avoid crazy people pulling out in the middle of nowhere. But guys, you guys have this. This thing terrifies the life out of me. I gotta give you context first about my life. See, I grew up, both of my parents were heavily involved in gangs. So I grew up in some sketchy places. Like the places that you call hood, I called home. Like it was scary all the time. But guys, this thing right here scares the life out of me because I'll be driving in the middle of the night and these things just jump out of you in the middle of nowhere. Not just 1, 2, 3, and as soon as you think they're all done, no, here comes 10 more. And they all want to kill me and my car. Another thing that has taken me some time to get used to is you guys have this really cool thing here called seasons. Yeah, we didn't have them in California. We only had one. But I remember when we were gonna move here, me and my wife sent beautiful pictures of all those seasons to each other. And we'd send pictures of the snow and be like, doesn't it look so much fun? Isn't it gonna be so amazing? Fall, it's so beautiful on the trees. They look so pretty. Then we moved here. And guys, you have to move all that snow. Like you gotta get a snowblower and take all that snow out of the way, get shovels and shovel snow, put salt all over your sidewalks everywhere. There's a lot of work involved in it. And then when we bought our house, we said, oh, look at the beautiful trees in the backyard. They're so nice. And then fall came. And I found out the reason why we call it fall. Because all those things fall down and make my beautiful yard dirty. Well, one beautiful fall afternoon, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna clean it all up. So I grabbed my rake and I started cleaning it all up and I made a beautiful pile. And after hours of blood, sweat, and tears, I looked back at my beautiful mound of leaves, my beautiful tidiness of creation, and sat back on my patio and just enjoyed a glass of water. But I have 4 kids. And one of them, his name is Zion. And Zion is our wild child. Every family has a wild child. And if you can identify them right now, it's probably because it's you. Well, Zion came running out of our house. And before I could get a word out, he belly flops into our leaves and begins to throw them everywhere, all over the yard, and making a mess out of what I just created. And all I could do was sit there with my hands in my face and shake my head. Because this was the problem. We wanted different things. See, I wanted a clean backyard. He wanted to go make a mess and have fun. And isn't this the problem with relationships? Where we want 2 different things? Where I want one thing and they expect something different. And because of that, what ends up happening is things get messy. Relationships are messy. Kids can be raised with the best values, but still make poor choices. In-laws, oh, we love those in-laws. Can have the best intentions and yet say those passive-aggressive statements that drive you crazy. Spouses, they say they'll change their bad habits. New me, new year, I'm gonna be different. I'm gonna clean up after myself. Here we are, week 1 into the new year, and you're still finding yourself frustrated and cleaning up after them. Or exes, they can promise to co-parent peacefully, but use kids as leverage in arguments. Friends in which you trust with confidential things can overshare and say things you don't want to other people. Why? Because people do peoplish things. They mess up, they disappoint us, and sometimes they hurt us. So staying away feels so much better. Like if I could just avoid all people and keep my distance, keep them all away, it'll be so much better. If my life didn't have people, it would be perfect. So keeping everyone away and staying safe feels so much easier. But why does it feel like that? Well, there are 3 reasons I believe that we enjoy our time by ourselves. And the first reason why we just love being by ourselves is the reason of control. Because when we're by ourselves, it feels like we can control everything. Like we can control our own space, our own time. We can listen and watch whatever we want. Guys, the TV is ours. We can watch as much football as we want. We can listen to the radio and listen to anything we want to listen to. We can listen to our podcast, our music, and we don't have to listen to Moana 1,000 times over and over and over again. And just when you think it's all over, no, here comes Disney coming out with number 2 and introducing a brand new set of songs and a brand new soundtrack that drives you absolutely crazy. Sorry, that might just be me. Being free from people means there's no interruptions when you work from home. You can control. The second reason why we like to be by ourselves is we've been conditioned that people can hurt us. We've learned through painful experiences that people can cause some of the most pain. In fact, the people who matter the most are often the ones who hurt us the most. So to avoid pain, we avoid people. So you do your best to distance yourself from people, keeping people at a safe distance. Because why? As soon as we have everything all together, as soon as we have our life put together in one place, what do people do? They come up and mess up all the leaves and make it all a mess. So it feels like keeping a distance is the best choice. The third reason why we like being away from people is we can avoid conflict. See, conflict can feel so overwhelming, and avoiding it can feel like the best solution. When you're alone, you don't have anybody to argue with because there are so many things to argue about in today's age. Like you can argue about politics and our values and our personality difference. You can argue about sports and who's better, the Eagles or the Cowboys. There are so many things to argue about. You can argue about your miscommunication last night when they said they were gonna do this and you thought they were gonna do that. And all of a sudden now you're frustrated at each other and don't know what to do. You can argue about Kendrick or Drake and who's better. There are so many things to argue about. So what do? We create boundaries. At least that's what we call them. But the reality is, it's just the distance that we've created between us and people. We've created these things to keep people away from us because that feels like the best choice. But in reality, what that does is instead of keeping people out, you've kept yourself in. And now what you've tried to do to create protection has created a prison. And the worst thing we could do to any inmate is solitary confinement. And in our minds, we are alone all by ourselves. How do you know this? Well, a study was done in Harvard in 2024 that reported that 21% of adults frequently or almost always are lonely. In 2023, their US Surgeon General declared a national loneliness and social isolation epidemic. In their findings, they found out that 1 in 2 adults in America are living with measurable levels of loneliness. Joe, I'm an introvert. Being lonely is not that bad. That same study said this: loneliness is far more than just a bad feeling. It harms both individual and societal health. It is associated with a greater risk of cardiovascular disease, dementia, stroke, depression, anxiety, and premature death. Guys, that sounds like the end of a drug commercial. And I'm talking about loneliness. So the truth is, protecting ourselves from people hasn't actually protected us. And isolation isn't the answer. In fact, connection can be scary, but it's so worth it. Joe, how do you know that relationships are worth fighting for? Well, the first thing we have to realize is when God designed us for connection. See, when God created everything, in the very beginning in Genesis, if you open up your Bibles to the very first book, it speaks of how he created everything. And he creates the light and darkness in day 1, and then creates the sky in day 2, and then earth and sea and vegetation. And then he creates all the birds in the sky. He creates all the fish in the sea. He creates the hog, the frog, and the dog. And after everything he creates, he says, it is good. Then he creates cats and says, oops. I'm just kidding, he doesn't say that. But then we get to day 6, and he doesn't say it is good. Because in day 6, in Genesis 2:18, it says this: it is not good for man to be alone. See, relationships aren't optional, they're essential. To the point that when Jesus was here, he modeled that for us. He showed us the value of relationships by having people around him in which he called disciples, in which he wasn't just teaching, but showing us the power of relationships. But not only is this backed up both biblically, scientifically, modern science backs us up, right? Research that shows us that people with larger, more diverse social networks tend to live longer and have better physical and mental health. In that same study, they found out that people exposed to the common cold virus were less likely to get sick if they had strong social connections. Not only is it backed up biblically, scientifically, but can I tell you personally? See, 15 years ago, I got a phone call that radically changed my life forever. I remember it like it was yesterday because it was my birthday. And my mom was calling, and I thought she was calling just to say happy birthday, but she called and said, Joe, I'm so sorry to tell you this on your birthday. I've just got bad news. I'm calling you to tell you that I've got cancer. And I've only got a few more months to live. I remember it like it was yesterday because everything inside of me wanted to hang up the phone, go to sleep, and pretend like it was all a dream. Everything inside of me wanted to push people away, push past that experience, get away from people, get away from situations, get away from circumstances, just get away because I didn't want to deal with any person. I didn't want to deal with anybody. But there was something else inside of me that said, you should reach out to somebody, you should call somebody. It's like I called the only person I thought I could at that time. That was a pastor. I called them up and I just said, hey, I just need you to pray for me. I said, I definitely will, but do you need anything else? I said, no, I'm good. I'll make it through this. I went to sleep and I woke up the next day, got ready as I normally would, jumped in the car, drove down the street. Part of me wanted to just keep driving, drive away, but out of habit, I drove right to the church. I remember standing in front of the parking lot thinking, I don't want to go in because people are going to ask how you're doing and I don't want to say the truth. So what's the comment? What's the thing that I'll say? What's the phrase that I'll say just to say, shorten up conversations, just say everything's good, I'm great, I'm fantastic. I remember walking into the building and I saw her. From across the room, it was an older lady in our church and her name was Mama Juana. Now, some of you know I'm from California and you just heard something different, so I'm gonna say it slow. Her name was Mama Juana. And she looked me dead in the eye. I tried to avoid conversation with her, so I went the opposite direction, got away as fast as I could, but she was fast. She grabbed me on my shoulder, turned me around, looked me dead square in the eye and said, Joe, I'll never be your mom. But if you ever need the hug of a mom, I'm here. And she reached her arms around me and hugged me. I wanted to get out of it. I wanted to get away. I wanted to get out of that circumstance. I wanted to get away from her. But in that moment, all of a sudden, my shoulders began to shrink. All of a sudden, it came true in that very moment. This verse came alive for me, and it was that. It is not good for man to be alone. See, she spoke God's design in me, that you were not supposed to do this by yourself. And I don't know what you're going through. I don't know the experiences you're facing right now, but I know this. You might be trying to push people away. You might be trying to isolate yourself. You might be trying to grit your teeth to get through this moment by yourself. But the truth is, people, you need people. Because God designed us in that way, and you can't keep trying to push people away every time you go through a circumstance, every time you go through this situation. I don't know the medical diagnosis. I don't know the circumstance. I don't know what you're facing, but I know this. God designed you for connection. Joe, if God designed us for relationship, but conflict is inevitable, what do we do with it? I'm so glad you asked. You asked great questions. God designed us for connection. And God develops us in conflict. See, God designed us for relationships, even though conflict is inevitable. Conflict itself is not the problem. How we handle it's the problem. A thriving garden will naturally grow weeds. The presence of weeds isn't the problem. Ignoring them is. So relationships like gardens need regular care. Conflict like weeds signal areas that need attention, and when conflicts are addressed, the relationship has space to flourish. See, conflict is normal, and sometimes it's absolutely necessary. Healthy gardens have weeds, and healthy relationships have conflict. So there's a verse in Romans 12:18 that kind of points to this and says this: if possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. But there's a few ways that we try to live this verse out. And the first way is the most healthiest. That way is called peacemaker. See, this is somebody who's actively seeking to resolve conflict in healthy ways, finding constructive ways to bring about peace. They strive for reconciliation and truth while adjusting honesty and compassion. They value transparency, but balance grace and truth extremely well. But then there's a version that looks like this that's not this. And that's not a peacemaker, that's a peace faker. See, this is someone who suppresses conflict and often for the sake of superficial harmony, pretending as if everything's okay, like there's no issues, there's no situations, no circumstance. No, everything is peaceful. But there's a problem. It's similar to the problem in each of our homes called a hot water tank. See, a hot water tank is created to hold hot water, but hot water creates steam and steam creates pressure. And if that hot water tank doesn't have the right pressure relief valves, that will end up exploding. In the same way, you were created to hold emotion. But if you keep suppressing that emotion in further and not talk about it, not deal with those issues, what ends up happening is one day you get to the point where you too can explode. That's why we have those moments in news where you hear about it and you hear people talk about, they were so nice, they were so kind. I don't know what happened to them. I do. What ended up happening is through all that suppression and dealing with pushing all those issues down, one day they snapped. And it's easy to move from a peace faker to this next type of person, which is a peace taker. See, this is a person that's not trying to find peace. This is a person who wants to give everybody a piece of their mind. And someone who's looking for conflict, stirring up division, discord, rather than seeking harmony. This is someone who is constantly seeing life through a negative lens. How do I know I'm dealing with that? How do I know I'm living there? Well, what are you seeing in your life? Are you constantly seeing all the negativity? Every time people get around you, it's all you point out is how negative our world is, how bad everything is. It's all you're posting about is how negative and dark our world is. Because that might give you some insight. Because what you keep looking for is what you're looking for, and what you keep looking for might reveal your heart issue. So what do we need in our life? We need to fight for people. Why? Because people can help us see what we can't see. See, when the Bible references people and friends inside of our life, it uses this analogy of iron sharpening iron. It says an iron sharpens iron like a friend sharpens a friend. But iron doesn't sharpen iron through air. It sharpens it through friction. See, the only way that I get better is when I have people in my life that bump up against me. But Joe, I don't want conflict. I don't want to deal with people. I don't want to deal with any issues. I want perfect peace and harmony. I want everything to be fine. I want everything to be perfect. So we actually try to create a world like that. In fact, in Arizona, there was a thing called the Biosphere 2, where we try to create a world that was perfect, where every living plant and animal had all the right sunlight, they had all the right vegetation, they had everything perfect. But there was a problem. The trees would never grow to full maturity because all of a sudden, all the trees were falling down out of nowhere. Scientists couldn't figure out what was the problem, what was happening, why are these trees falling down? Until one person figured it out. The reason was they took out wind. So what they figured out was when they took out resistance, things didn't grow. See, this is why you shouldn't be surprised when your beautiful princess of a daughter turns into a teenager and all of a sudden wakes up every day wanting to fight with you. Why? Because she's giving you a reason and an opportunity to grow. Thank you. This is why we shouldn't be surprised when after 15 years of marriage, you're still finding yourself in arguments and you're wondering why. You're saying, shouldn't we get past this? Shouldn't we be beyond this? Shouldn't things be perfect? Shouldn't it be easy by now? Shouldn't we have not argued in the car all the way to church? But what they're giving you is a reason and an opportunity for you to grow. So thank you. See, if conflicts are both necessary and normal, why are you trying to avoid it? See, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to continue talking about this. Like, how do we continue to do this? How do we build boundaries? How do we engage in conflict? How do we fight fair? How do we have relationships with people when people start peopling? But not only does God want us to have great relationships with each other because God designed us for connection, not only does God develop us in conflict, but God desires a relationship with you. Earlier, we talked about Genesis and how in the very beginning, he creates everything. And when he creates everything to have a relationship with each other, but he also creates it that it might have a relationship with him. But there was a problem. People do peoplish things. And it created a distance between us and God, and this thing came in that called sin that separated us from God. So what did God do? He stepped in. See, this moment on the cross was a moment of him stepping in to say, I'm not afraid of your mess. I'm not afraid of your past. I'm not afraid of what you've done. I'm not afraid of your mistakes. I'm not afraid of everything that you've done. I'm not afraid. In fact, I care about you so much that I'm willing to step in the mess you created. See, I created the division. I created the mess. I created the problem. But Jesus steps in to my place to build a relationship with me. See, he brings to light what we spoke about earlier in Romans 12:18. It says this, if possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. But I want to highlight 4 words from this. It depends on you. See, Jesus took this seriously. Jesus took this so seriously that he stepped in because he believed relationships are worth it. See, you can't avoid conflict, but you can choose to handle it with grace, love, and forgiveness in the same way that Jesus did. So can I ask you a question? Who's worth fighting for? Earlier, I told you a story about my son, Zion, and how after I just put everything together, made my backyard look nice and neat, he came running out and messed up all the leaves. So I left you in the point of the store where my hands were in my face, and all I could do was shake my head. But my wife came back up to me. She tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Are you gonna miss this?" No, I'm not missing anything. I'm watching it in 4D. He's messing up my entire backyard. All the work that I've done, all the things that I've done, all the decoration. I've made it look beautiful, and he's making it look a mess. She said, are you gonna miss making a moment with your son because you're so worried about the mess? You're so worried about the pile of leaves that you're gonna miss this moment. Isn't your relationship with your child worth fighting for? Isn't your spouse, your friend, your family member worth the effort? Don't you need to connect back with God because he hasn't been distant, but you've been distant, and now it's time to turn back. Has work gotten in the way where work has taken a priority inside of your life? And this year you need to close the laptop. Because no matter how much money you accumulate, it'll never buy back the time when you missed it. So don't miss this moment. Go play with your kids. Send that text message. Pick up the phone. Why? Because relationships are worth fighting for, and we need people.